Every snap is an interview.
After the Snap.
What a snap.
Hey, keep your mouth shut, 50!
I lead by example.
With Blake and Reed Ferguson, discussing life in, out, and after football.
To be able to leave walking away with a degree and a championship, it couldn't be any better.
Yeah!
Well, you can take this boy out the real South on but you can't take the real South out of my voice. And now here we go again, twist a little bit deeper because I got thick skin.
Reed, I'm realizing that as I typed up our intro for this week, autocorrect on my Mac took it to outback.com, not outkick.com. Clay Travis is not the founder of outback.com. He is the founder of Outkick.
Do you think Clay likes to enjoy a bloomin' onion?
Ooh, you know what?
Forgot to ask.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity.
Should
have asked him that. And we will have to get back to our listeners on that because I feel like that's vital information.
Sure thing.
But you know what is also vital information that the people need to know?
We're back for the first time in 2 weeks.
We're back. And it felt like forever.
I
don't know about you. It felt like the last time we recorded after the snap was like 2 months ago.
So much happened.
Yes. 3 football games happened.
Or
3 between the two of us. Because you and I played the Ferguson Bowl. That was one.
You didn't
played
play
in the
Sunday.
same game.
You didn't play Sunday. That's right. I forgot
we
you went.
played Thursday.
Yes.
Y'all played Sunday.
3 games.
That's 3 games.
Yes, that's correct.
Math.
Yes. The Dolphins.
But I do feel like
Go
that
ahead.
we should
We
lay
can touch on it.
some yes, because I've been waiting for so long to give you
700 days.
Yes, the bragging rights are sitting in Miami for at least 11 weeks.
11 weeks.
Is it week 14, 15?
Yeah, 14, I think.
Yeah.
So 10, 11 games. I will give you props. When after the last play happened and the clock ran out, you were very composed. And I expected to walk across the field and see a much more you were ecstatic on the inside. I know. I have experienced that 4 times. But not to rub it in your face or anything. But I know you were happy. I'm having fun with it. I know you were happy on the inside. I get that. I was surprised that you were not like walk across the field, smile on your face. You were. I think it looked from my point of view when I watched you walk across the field like you were shocked that of how the last play. Well, because I was surprised.
Yeah,
as well.
I think
Just
that
like,
the way
there was so much going on, and
I think the way the game shook out, with you guys and the final trying to get on the ball to clock it and send the field goal team out there and running out of time and no timeouts and the goal line stop, and ending up having the butt punt. Like there was so much happening that I walked across and met up with you, and I could tell that you were more disappointed because of the way that it ended than you would have been had we beat y'all by 4 touchdowns.
Sure.
Like
the
close defeats are always the heartbreaking ones because
doubt.
You get so amped up to go out there and like you guys did this past weekend, you went out and kicked the game-winning field goal. You were being set up, and it just didn't work out. And so, as a professional, I wanted to be conscious of that. And so, but yes, it did feel great to get Ferguson Bowl victory number 1. It had been quite a while since the Dolphins had beat Buffalo, dating back to before I was in Miami. And so it did feel good to get the bragging rights. I had so many guys come up to me last week as we were prepping for Cincinnati and just say, man, how good does it feel to be your brother? And for those who don't know, Reed and I are quite competitive. And
I have no idea what you're about to say.
I don't have any idea what I'm about to say either.
Oh, okay.
But
I thought I did.
No, I don't.
thought you were going to go
know.
into when I would beat you in NCAA and then run
Well,
up this.
that's
Okay,
the thing
all right.
is you would beat me in just about everything.
That's what older brothers are supposed to do, man.
Baseball in the backyard, basketball on the basketball court, or on the Nerf goals in the hallway.
Yes.
Video games. It's like big brother can't let little brother win at anything. And
sometimes you got to be humbled. That's why you're so humble.
So it felt good. Yes. That was why I was so humble walking across the field to meet up with you after we handed you a fat L. All right, let's move on.
You guys played 4 days later.
We had a quick turnaround, which Thursday night games are always a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
But we go.
Fun fact: we go Thursday to Thursday this year. We play Thanksgiving. We play Thanksgiving, and then in New England on TNF. So I don't know if that's ever been done before, but anyway, you guys played at Cincinnati.
Yeah,
got to see your LSU fellas.
So it was already a quick turnaround, but it was even quicker. And also the reason why we didn't have a podcast last week was because we ended up having to fly out early due to Hurricane Ian moving across the state. We ended up going up Wednesday morning, which meant Tuesday turned into kind of a long day with packing and all kinds of just chaos going on. With the storm kind of moving in Tuesday night, it was absolutely chaotic. And so we do apologize to our listeners. We try to be super, super consistent about having a podcast product for you every Friday, and we were not able to deliver that. So we do apologize. But the one thing, that did come from that game, as we lost by 12 points, but everybody wanted to just kind of bring up the Tua thing, and that's kind of behind us, and all of that. I am not at liberty to speak on his medical issues or any of the team stuff that's going on, but it is scary to see a teammate go down in an injury on primetime television that basically the entire world is watching. And so was glad to see his smiling face on our plane ride back. And so it was super scary, but everything, the Lord has a plan for everything, and hopefully for Tua, he's gonna create this into an even bigger and better story of success for him. I say that as a teammate, but also as just a brother in Christ.
Sure.
Love Tua to death. Absolutely adore him. So that's kind of all I have there. Obviously can't share a whole lot because of his privacy with the team and his medical privacy. So but yeah, it was good to see him just smiling at us.
Love it. We went to Baltimore on Sunday. Got a good Sunday 1:00 game. Those schedules are the best. As we've talked about before, we enjoy the primetime games, but Sunday at 1:00 is undefeated.
Especially when you're on the road.
And a short flight back, which was nice. We were back before the Sunday night game, I think, before it even kicked off. So that was awesome. 17-point comeback in Baltimore. It was pouring rain the whole game. It was kind of windy, not super windy, but that stadium is you played there a few weeks ago. It's pretty high. It's a bowled in, so you don't really get a lot of the wind that is showing on the weather forecast. You don't feel a ton of it in the stadium. And somebody made a comment after the game. It kind of feels like you are in just a permanent Halloween like store when you're there, because everything is like purple and black, and there's like light up eyes, birds and stuff everywhere. It's like they have permanent Halloween decorations everywhere. I just thought that was pretty funny, and it kind of makes sense. I didn't think of it at the time, but looking back, it is pretty Halloween-ish,
Spooky.
Very spooky. But no, we it was pouring rain, and funny enough, when we played there in 2018, first game of the season, we lost. It was like 42-3 or something. It was bad. Not a fun game. It reminded me the weather was exactly the same. Pouring the whole game, wet footballs, just bad news across the board. Game-winning field goal for T-Bass. That was awesome. That was his first one of his career. I got the ball back for him after the game, right after the field goal.
The TV actually followed you.
Oh, really?
And showed you at the very end you getting the ball back. I think you said you had to trade. You had to trade the ball to get.
The game ball. That was
right?
earlier. That was earlier in the game.
Okay, so maybe it was
earlier when they showed my back.
Got it.
Yeah,
yes.
that was earlier in the game after a field goal.
Okay.
They did not get the net up in time, so it went in the stands.
Got it. Okay. So I was mistaken. I didn't see all the game. I was traveling that day. I did catch I literally walked out of security in the airport and walked up right as Josh Allen was taking a knee. I think he was taking a knee.
Yes.
And then you guys called a timeout, and I was like, "This is perfect
timing."
And I took a video serving up the dime burgers, which actually leads us to the first ever happening of this. And I think you know where this is going. I
can't believe that. I can't believe this. I can't believe it.
Dude, there were what?
I got
there were three other
yes
potentially
nominees
after the clutch snap of the weeks, but I overrule as co-host of this
producer
podcast.
Chris I'm sorry, Social Jack overruled.
Social Jack overruled. Congratulations to Liam, Jack, and Jared. Liam from Atlanta, Jack from Green Bay, and Jared Lawrence from Ole Miss. But the after the snap clutch snap of the week goes to none other than Mr. Reed Ferguson.
Thank you very much. I will tell you this, funny enough, as much as I have made about the rain during the game, the skies parted in the last 30 seconds of the game. The skies parted.
Amazing.
When he took both when they did QB sneak to get the first down, and we took both knees, there was no rain. It was amazing. Can't script it any better. Game-winning field goal from the 4-yard line, whatever it was. So thank you. I will accept my award as the first co-host to win the clutch snap of the week. Much appreciated to your override.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you
to you,
Jack. I did get a lot of messages from listeners and some friends, some people that are listeners that sent me some messages on social media that told me either that I should win it or asked me if I will be on the poll this week. So I didn't want to be biased and give it to myself or put myself on there, but this is a 50-50 podcast, so you can overrule.
Yes, overrule and did. So congratulations. I think it's time we get into our interview with Mr. The Clay Travis. He was an awesome interview, and I can't wait for y'all to hear it. Find it next. Joining us this week on After the Snap, we have syndicated radio host, author, founder of Outkick.com, and still the most hated man in the history of the cable news network, and quite possibly all of social media, the Mr. Clay Travis. Clay, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate y'all having me on. Excited to make the world continue to be a better place.
Clay, I know, thank you again for joining us. I know you are at your son's baseball game right now. I want to get into, obviously there's a big matchup, one that all three parties on this call are looking forward to this weekend, LSU versus Tennessee. We'll get into that in a few minutes. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, we talk about NFL football on here. We talk about college football. How do you feel about the current landscape of the SEC? And then follow that up with how you see the additions of Texas and Oklahoma faring when they join in a few years.
Well, reverse it, right? So I'll start the second part first. I think Texas and Oklahoma are going to be good additions to the SEC because, one, they're super premium brands that have SEC-like fan bases, which I think will be well suited. But bigger picture there, too, I also think it'll be beneficial to the conference because right now you can go 12 years based on these idiotic divisions that they have crafted between playing on the road. For instance, it's crazy to people, and I'll get to this in a minute, but using the Tennessee LSU example, the last time that Tennessee played at LSU was the 13 men on the field game all the way back in 2010. So I feel like if you're really going to be in the same conference, you should have it set up where every 4 years you play home and home. And so you can go and have played in every opposing team stadium as well as hosted them in your own. And I think that's the way the new schedule is going to go. I think they're going to go with a 9-team conference schedule and then do away with the divisions, which means, you got a few, maybe 2, maybe 3 of the yearly rivals, but you'll play everybody every other year. And every 4 years, you'll play every team home and away. And I think that's important. So I think the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, both from a brand and schedule perspective, is going to be good for the conference. And the first part I think you asked was about the overall sort of strength of the SEC and college football in general. Look, I think the SEC is kind of in a holding pattern to know how long Nick Saban is going to be the coach. I think the level of dominance that he has created at Alabama will not be equaled in our lifetimes. And everything is kind of cyclical, right? I think Tennessee is starting to kind of trend back up, which is a very good position if you're a Tennessee fan. But it's funny. My kids don't believe it, but I try to tell them, hey, there's a whole generation of Alabama fans that grew up when Alabama wasn't very good, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And for about 15 years there, you could have been 8-23 and Alabama was not very good. And now it seems like Alabama's never going to lose again. And so I do think there's sort of a cyclical nature to college football that Nick Saban has broken to his will. And a part of me feels like when Nick Saban is gone, it'll be better for the conference because there may well be more parity and more cycling up. And I also think the expansion of the playoff is going to be a really good thing because right now, relatively few teams get the opportunity to go to the playoff. And when we have 12 teams going to the playoff every year, I think it's going to be better because, there'll be come November 30 teams that feel like, hey, we have a chance if everything goes well in November for our team to get into the playoff. And right now, for the most part, by the time you get to November, there's 8 or 10 teams that feel like they have a shot at the playoff now. And many of those don't really have a good chance. So I think expanding the playoff will be good for that reason. And I'm excited to see what the overall impact will be going forward.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there on all points. I think on the scheduling aspect of it, one thing that you pointed out was playing. So everybody gets to play each school home and away every 4 years. One thing that both of our parents went to Tennessee. So one thing that I didn't get to do, but Blake did get to do, was play at Tennessee. I think, Blake, in 2013. Is that correct? 2014, maybe. It was pouring rain. I know
no,
that.
you were at LSU from 2013.
Oh, 2017.
It was
Sorry, 18.
Yeah, it was 2017 when we played in Knoxville. About 30-mile-an-hour winds, and coming out of halftime, that was the interview at halftime where they were interviewing Coach O in the tunnel, and he was like, it's like playing football in your backyard. You just have to love football. And we came out, and you couldn't see the other side of the stadium from our sideline. It was raining so hard, but
oh wow, yeah.
But I as a true Clay Travis fan, I read on Rocky Top when I was in like 5th or 6th grade, maybe 7th grade. But going to Tennessee was certainly a highlight. I know Reed certainly wishes that he had been able to do that as well, and hopefully at some point, they'll structure it to where that's possible, for you to play every team in that, home and away in your career in college.
Well, first of all, I feel old because you're talking about how young you were when you wrote my books.
Sorry to date you.
Yeah, now you guys are in the NFL, and I'm an old man. But I'll tie that in as well. Jackson Lampley, when I wrote Dixieland Delight, was a little kid. His dad, Brad, played offensive line at Tennessee. And he now is one of the backup guards on Tennessee's football team. And I saw him, after the Florida game, because we were up there for that one. And he's just an absolute giant of a kid, grown man now. And I just can't get over how funny it was and how wild it is to think about, him. He's quoted in the book as like an 8-year-old because I was hanging out with his dad at the tailgate. And now, he's 21 or 20 or whatever the heck he is. And it's interesting to think about now as a dad, right, for myself, because I've got a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And I like to think that, over the next 5 or 6 years, my life won't really change that much and I won't really feel or look that much different. But you guys know, I mean, that period of about 12 to 18, 11 to 18 is 7 years. And you go from being a boy to, a man. And it's really just kind of wild to experience now as a dad.
How to long snap.
Yeah, no kidding.
Clay, a few things on the current SEC schedule, I guess. Contenders versus pretenders. I have a few teams I just want to get your thoughts on. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. What do you have any initial thoughts on? Are those teams contenders or pretenders? And if they're not, are Georgia and Bama on a crash course to see each other again?
I think Georgia and Bama are on a crash course to see each other again, but let me kind of break down. You can give me one of those at a time. Yep. I'll start with Tennessee. Tennessee offensively, I think, can score points on anyone. And so when you get into the context of contender, I think if you can score 30 or more on pretty much anyone, which I think they can, if the opponent, they'll say they're playing Georgia and Alabama, they play them both. If Alabama comes out and turns the ball over 3 or 4 times in Knoxville, Tennessee could beat them. If both teams played their best game, Tennessee is not. But Tennessee is good enough on the offensive side of the ball to, I think, be considered a contender. Kentucky, and by the way, Tennessee's defense keeps them from being like any kind of, I truly think, elite team. They're really bad in the secondary. They don't have an elite pass rush to be able to cover it up. And so I tend to think they'll get exposed there at some point as they play higher caliber competition, maybe even starting this weekend. I don't think LSU's great at throwing the football, but I think Tennessee has a good chance to give up 30 to pretty much anybody too. So they're going to be in a lot of shootouts.
We had 80 yards passing at Auburn. So
I saw that, which is difficult for me to understand how that's possible. But Tennessee's pass defense can make a lot of people look pretty good. So, I mean, so we'll see what happens. I'm actually really curious Saturday to see what happens in that one. Kentucky, like as I get older and my audience gets bigger, I feel bad for saying things that are negative about college kids because they're like 20 years younger than me. But now within that context, I have seen Mel Kiper saying that Will Levis potentially is going to be the second quarterback coming off the board in the NFL draft, come April or May. I just don't see it. And so I think that Kentucky is a pretender right now. And I'll just give you, not trying to denigrate Will Levis, but the three toughest games Kentucky has left on their schedule: Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Georgia. I would take all three of those quarterbacks, Will Rogers, Hendon Hooker, and Stetson Bennett, in the college team and on the college system that they are running over Will Levis right now. And we know he just had the 2 turnovers on back-to-back final drives against Kentucky, against Ole Miss. And that's probably not fair to him. You know, he's trying to go airborne, sure, Josh Allen style, and get the first down there. And he may have gotten a targeting call that Ole Miss got away from. But then he doesn't get – this is what bothered me. If you're going to be an elite college quarterback, he didn't allow his team to get set down on that final drive. I don't know if you guys saw the way that game ended. Yes. But his team did not get set. His wide receiver wasn't set. That's on him, right? Not his flaw, but there was plenty of time. He had time to take a breath, make sure the whole team was set before the ball got snapped. And he threw a great ball, touchdown, should have won the game, but they took it off because of the procedure penalty. And then the next play, he gets hit blindside, gives up the ball. He kept it too long. Those are kind of things that just shouldn't happen, I think, if you're an elite level college quarterback. And so I have trouble believing that he is good enough to really be considered a contending quarterback. And who were the other two you asked me about?
Ole Miss and Texas A&M.
Yeah, I'll start with Texas A&M. I don't think Texas A&M has a quarterback, and their offense has been mediocre at best. I think they've got a pretty good defense, and they've got some good young talent on that team. And I'm going to be in Tuscaloosa this weekend. I've got my boys I'm taking down. To your point earlier, I like to take them on the road when I can, when they don't have sporting events or obligations themselves. I try to go watch as many as I can. And we should mention at some point your dad and his travel schedule and how cool that is to have two kids playing in the NFL and before that, 2 kids playing in college and everything else. But look, I look at it and I just don't think Ole Miss is a contender based on their overall offensive skill set, particularly at quarterback. And then I actually think you didn't ask me about them, but I think Mississippi State may be the second best team in the SEC West. I know they had a bad second half on the road in Death Valley, but Will Rogers, I think, is really a good quarterback. I like the system that Mike Leach has built around him. I think they're going to beat Arkansas this weekend. I know there's questions, at least as we're talking right now, unless something's come down for sure in the last several hours, because I've been at kids sporting events. KJ Jefferson doesn't seem like he's going to be 100%, may not be able to play at all. And so I think Mississippi State's going to win that game too. And so I like Mississippi State as potentially the second best team in the SEC West, honestly, which ties in again with Ole Miss. I thought Ole Miss was very fortunate to win that game against Kentucky. Kentucky's had special teams issues all year. They reared their head again. And I didn't like a lot of the decisions Lane Kiffin made down the stretch. If you were watching, I mean, he went for it on 4th and goal from the 5. The Kentucky defense is solid, and there was nothing there. Should have gone up 6, I think. And then, like we said, we got the double Will Levis turnovers, but barring those, I think they would have gone down and scored. So I think Ole Miss is a pretender in terms of being able to contend for a trip to Atlanta. Here's a good question for you guys. Can you name the SEC schools that have never been to Atlanta, never made the SEC championship game?
I think the easy one to say right off the bat would be Vanderbilt.
Yep. There are 4, by the way, I believe.
It's
4 of the 14.
Missouri. Missouri's played in 2, right?
Yeah, Missouri's been.
Is it?
They went right away when they joined.
That's right.
Is Mississippi State one of them?
No, Mississippi State has been once, I believe. They played Tennessee in '98.
A&M went with Manziel.
No, A&M has not.
They did not. Okay, so yeah, Vandy, A&M, South Carolina.
South Carolina's been. They went when they had.
Who's the quarterback that was from Georgia?
Marcus Lattimore was their running back, if you remember. And
is that when Clowney was there?
May have been when Clowney was there. When you get to be my age, all these years run together. You know, Clowney feels like he played like last year to me, and he's been gone like 9, or 10 or whatever.
Can't remember that quarterback that they had that was from Georgia a while, like 10 years ago, probably 15 years, 12 years ago, maybe. Vanderbilt.
Arkansas has been a couple times. So I'll tell you there. So it's A&M, it's Vanderbilt, it's Kentucky, and it's Ole Miss.
Kentucky.
No kidding.
I was thinking
I would have thought Kentucky
had
win when we were growing up.
Yeah, back in the early 2000s or maybe in the
Kentucky's
90s.
had
Jared,
two.
what was his name?
What
Jared,
I would say,
was
really good
Lorenzen.
quarterbacks.
Lorenzen.
Yeah, they maybe three if you want to. Jared Lorenzen, if you go back far enough. Tim Couch, obviously,
Sure.
Who was 20 years ago or whatever. And Andre Woodson was a really good college football quarterback for Kentucky back in the day. They were pretty good. They beat, you guys probably remember that, #1 LSU. That was the year Les Miles won the national championship with the 2-loss LSU team. And came out with his talking point, which was, we've never been beaten in regulation, which was an all-time Les Miles line. That got him into the title game. I think that was against Ohio State that year in New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So as we kind of get into the game this weekend, a little bit, two questions for you. LSU, I believe the over-under was set at 7 wins for their season. They're currently 4-1 overall. And Tennessee is over-under at 7.5. Does LSU get to 7, and is Tennessee locked in for the over?
I think we should also mention that LSU is the only currently ranked team that we didn't ask if they were pretenders or contenders.
Well,
and we would be remiss if we didn't ask that. It took them to week 6 to get back into the top 25.
That's fair.
But I think we have to ask, even though we probably know the answer.
I do not think they are contenders. But again, I think the second best team in the SEC West is wide open. And the team that I said I think is going to end up the second best in the SEC West, LSU already beat. So, I was doing my SEC power rankings this week, and I said this is probably going to be the last week where you can be in a position where you rank everybody better than the teams that they've beaten, because I feel like we're probably headed a little bit for chaos in terms of
no doubt
a lot of teams that are 5-3 caliber, for lack of a better way to describe it, and will kind of beat up on each other in both the East and the West. I'm not sure who the third best team in the SEC is right now, behind Georgia and Alabama. So I think that's a question not only for the West but for the East. Okay, Tennessee, I'm probably jinxing it. I don't see how at this point they don't go over the number. They won 2 that were going to be challenging for them in the first 4. Have a decent chance to beat LSU, I think, in a couple of days.
Favored by 3.
And then look, you got UT Martin, you've got South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Mizzou, who are not very good. So I think even if they lost to the 4 good teams left on their schedule, which I would say is LSU, Kentucky, Alabama, and
4.
Alabama and Georgia, they'd still get to 8-4. And as a Tennessee fan, I don't know what your dad would say, but I would take 2-2 in those 4 games right now, because I think Tennessee would go 10-2. If they split.
I think if you asked our dad about the Tennessee schedule year in and year out, if they went 1-11 but they beat Florida every single year, he would be happy.
That's right.
He would be more than happy, and they've already done that this year. I know you were at the game. You were filming from the stands. You were obviously ecstatic. What would it be like for them to go on an absolute tear the next 5 games and maybe pull 3 of the 4 against the Big 4 ranked opponents?
So if they went 3-1, then again, I think they're going to beat the other 4 teams, and I really do believe that they would make the college football playoff, because look, if they beat Georgia, they'd be in the SEC championship game, probably going 3-1 against that group, because they'd have the tiebreak over Georgia no matter what else. If they beat Alabama's going to win the West, I think, and then Tennessee would be the team that's left, kind of sitting outside at 11-1. That's almost too good to kind of dream of. If Tennessee beats LSU, I'll let myself start kind of daydreaming about that. But I have, what I would call battered ball syndrome, where over the last 15 years or so, every time you think something really good is going to happen, it's kind of the wheel comes off and everything falls apart. And so that's my concern or my fear as I look ahead. For LSU, look, I don't think that Florida State is very good. And I think they'd probably like to have that game back. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, you're not going to beat Alabama, but Florida's not that good. We don't know what's going to happen against Tennessee, but I also like LSU's chances, I believe, to get over that 7.5 hump.
If going back to Tennessee on the going 3-1 in those next ranked opponent games, is Alabama the preferred loss? I know it's a weird question, but in the scenario you just played out where they're going to win the West anyway, is that the preferred one loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think so,
four?
because that would probably get Tennessee into the SEC championship game, and that would be a big deal. But
Sure.
If you ask Tennessee fans, would you rather beat Alabama or Georgia, kind of irrespective of anything else, after losing to Nick Saban every year? Tennessee's beaten Georgia a couple of times. I think that the hope would be to beat Alabama. That would mean more to the average Tennessee fan. A Georgia win would be more significant.
Sure.
But Alabama getting a win over them would be one of those, hey, we're back moments for Tennessee football.
Do you think so Alabama being the only loss, you play them in the SEC championship? If you lose again, what do you think that says for the playoff, for the chances?
Yeah, I think you'd be out, which is
yeah.
why, if you're just like legitimately trying to get in the playoff, I think the 11-1 with a loss to Georgia that then beat Alabama, I don't know how Tennessee wouldn't get in the playoff.
Yeah, you would definitely be able to get in for sure.
I would think that would be a very likely scenario in that case. But again, 4-0, being able to talk about having a top 10 Tennessee team. If you get the win, here's a good stat for you. If Tennessee beats LSU and if Alabama beats A&M, then it would be the first time that Tennessee and Alabama are playing, both being undefeated since 1989. So that is pretty wild. That's pretty wild to think about, given the storied nature of these two programs. That's how long it would have been since that happened.
How do you see the game unfolding on Saturday, given kind of what you hit on with Tennessee's struggling secondary, LSU not being super proficient? I know Jaden Daniels is QBR. There's been a lot of chatter about him being pretty high on those charts, but everybody that watched the Auburn game that was hard to watch. It was either a handoff or he was scrambling for 6 or 7 yards going all the way down the field. How do you see it working out on Saturday?
Yeah, so let's start with the LSU offense against the Tennessee defense. I think the question is, one, how healthy is he, right? Because there's been some uncertainty about exactly how close to 100% he's going to be. And can Tennessee make him go to the second receiver so that they get a chance to get some pressure on him? Or is the primary receiver going to be open all day long, in which case there isn't really a chance for that pass rush to get there? Tennessee, and look, pace tempo wise, Tennessee's fortunate. I know LSU came back from a 17-0 deficit, but Tennessee went down on the road 10-0 to Pittsburgh. They were down early to Florida. A 10 or 14 point deficit to this offense doesn't really change what they do. And so I think Tennessee will score. I think the biggest question is, can the Tennessee defense kind of get some forced punts? Can they get some turnovers against LSU, as to whether this is a game that comes down to the wire all over again? On the other side of the ball, as long as Tennessee protects Hendon Hooker and as long as he stays healthy, they are going to score. And I think Tennessee's going to score 30 or more. So if I'm breaking down this game, my question is, can LSU get to 35 or more? Because I feel like Tennessee's going to get to 31 or more. And so I think if LSU wins, it'll be in a shootout. I don't think their defense is going to be good enough to slow down Tennessee, absent Hendon Hooker, who has not turned the ball over hardly at all since he took over as a starting quarterback. I think he's got like 38 touchdowns and 3 interceptions or something like that. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary job of accuracy and not turning the football over. Now, Cedric Tillman looks like he's going to be out. He's Tennessee's number 1 receiver. He was not in the Florida game either. So he doesn't have sort of his Robin to his Batman. So maybe if the game's close late, he doesn't have that, kind of guy that he trusts. That could be an issue. But if LSU is going to win, I think it's going to be because LSU has to go for 35 or more.
Tennessee, LSU, -3 spread for Tennessee. Do they cover?
I took LSU. Home SEC underdogs, I tend to like, particularly in this scenario where Tennessee is still only in year 2 of Josh Heupel. They've gone on the road and won a couple of top 25 games. They did it earlier this season against Pitt in overtime. They won a close game against Kentucky. But what this Tennessee team has not done is just come out and really taken it to somebody. And I think that's important sometimes to do on the road in what will be a raucous, Death Valley environment. So I think the value play is LSU plus the 3. If it gets down to, Tennessee 1, Tennessee 2, and you don't get a full field goal, I think that gets a little bit more challenging. But I like LSU plus 3 or plus 3.5.
Outstanding. We love to hear that.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit to something that Clay, you and I and Reed spoke about over the summer, which is the NIL landscape across college athletics. Obviously, has been, by all accounts, wildly successful by some, but it could also be described as a train somewhat off the tracks. Is NIL doing what it was intended to do, or are there some unintended consequences of it?
Well, I think we're still in the Wild West era of the NIL. And what I mean by that is nobody really knows. It's like you guys are young, but you kind of knew that the internet was going to change everything, but you didn't know who was going to benefit the most from the internet changing everything. What I would say in general, and I always believe this to be true, is I don't think that your average college football fan is going to tune out because the quarterback has a nice car or the offensive tackles have better apartments than they otherwise would, right? And so I think the fear of, this is going to change college athletics forever in terms of enjoying it has so far been a little bit of Pollyannish that has not become a reality. What I do think could become an issue, and this is what I've written, this is what I've talked, is at some point a billionaire is just going to say, I'm sick of my team losing. Here's $400 million to put into an NIL fund. I want us to get the best players every year. We'll give everybody $1 million to sign with us. And then my company will underwrite them to do something that isn't that significant. How do you determine that's not permissible? That's my biggest concern, is that at some point that really just does go to too much money. And you guys are NFL guys. Sports is interesting because ultimately sports is the only competition where the business is the competition. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you're Amazon and you're Walmart, like Amazon wants to destroy Walmart and win that business battle. Netflix wanted to eliminate Blockbuster and be, the preeminent way that people watched films. Now you got Disney Plus going up against Netflix. They want to end their competition. In the NFL, you guys play for the Dolphins and the Bills. If your teams were so good that you never lost, it might be great for you to be on those teams, but it would be bad for the NFL. The parity, the competition is what makes the leagues worthwhile. And so if you gave me a magic wand and said, hey, what makes sense? I think an NFL-style salary cap for college programs, college teams, where everybody in the conference gets the same amount of money to spend would actually be the best possible outcome. And my concern is that we end up in an era, and I think this is what undergirded sort of the Jimbo Fisher against Nick Saban rivalry, is A&M's got a lot more money than Alabama does. And Nick Saban has kind of relied on the fact that he's the best coach, he builds the best program, and he has the best chance to send guys into the first round where they make all their money. And suddenly Jimbo Fisher is sitting on a big pile of oil money and a lot of desperate Aggie alums and boosters who are ready to finally win a championship. And so that's how they get a competitive advantage that's potentially different than what Nick Saban is used to. And so I think that paradigm change, or at least the threat of it, is looming out there. And if you take it outside of A&M Bama, let's just say like Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. And Tim Cook, from everything I've heard, is a big Auburn football fan. Yep. He's a billionaire. I don't think Tim Cook has very many kids or any. What if he just said, hey, you know what? I'm going to endow $2 billion to Auburn to ensure that we always get the best recruiting class in college football. The 25 guys that we want to sign every year come here. Or if they don't, they're choosing to take less money to go elsewhere. And then some other buddy's got a billionaire who does the same thing. And you're kind of seeing it a little bit at Miami, for instance, and some of these other schools are kind of sniffing around the edges. But I think that's where the parity and the overall brand of college football could be at risk. Now, the one change there is, unlike in the NFL, where if you get a great quarterback, you get to keep him pretty much with your franchise for a long time. In college football, even if you got a stud, he's only going to be there 3 years. And, A&M spent a lot of money on recruits and has really good recruiting class right now. And Jimbo still doesn't have a quarterback. Auburn doesn't have a quarterback. So, sometimes these guys they expect to pan out, don't pan out on the field. So maybe it wouldn't be an unbelievable level of dominance. And so maybe it would still have great parity. But that's my fear about how NIL could play out.
Last thing,
it sounds like we need to find out who Elon Musk's favorite team
right.
is.
He's worth $250 billion. If he loved college football, he could go in and guarantee that his college football team basically didn't lose very many games for the rest of his life based on NIL.
Last thing that we wanted to cover with you, Clay, you put out an article sometime within the last couple of days, just noting the recent success, I guess, over the last 12 months, notedly, of your website, outkick.com, as well as your social media accounts and all of the growth that you've seen. Reed and I read so many different authors that are contributing to your website and all the sports coverage that you have. That's obviously what sort of sparked our relationship. Where do you see Outkick going over the next 5 years? Obviously, you've grown tremendously in the last 12 months. Where are you trying to go with this?
Yeah, I think we're going to be a top 5 sports destination site on the internet sooner rather than later. And I'm excited about that. I also am kind of curious when, you guys know this, when you never have lifted weights before, and you go in and you start lifting for the first time, your bench goes up like 100 pounds really, really fast. And you're like, dude, I'm going to be the strongest human being who's ever lived. And then going up the next 50 might take a really long time, right? And I think a lot of people out there who have, tried to pursue something new know what I'm talking about. I don't know when our growth, we quadrupled our audience from last September to this September. Well, if we did that again, for next year, we'd be like the second largest sports website in the country. Maybe that's possible. Or maybe, we're going to get that, equivalent of the first 100 pounds on the bench press and knock it out pretty fast. And then you really have to kind of get the fine-tuned edges. You have to put in a lot of work to get the next 100. Rapid growth is fun and exciting, and we've really kind of done that the last several years. I keep thinking maybe we'll slow down. So far, we haven't really. And so it's hard to project 5 years, but I think over the next couple, we're going to get pretty massive.
Something that you guys have really done well at Outkick is sort of bringing in the, not just sports, but bringing in somewhat of the political side of your, a big reason why you've had the growth that you have is because of the political, statements that you've made over the last several years, since Trump began his campaign, bringing on, is it Tomi Lahren?
Tomi Lahren's been killing it for
us. She's been, I know you mentioned her in the article. She's been phenomenal. With Gary Sheffield, he's pretty outspoken about his beliefs as well. How do you feel like that side of speaking not only sports, but speaking what you feel like is the truth at all times, has done for Outkick?
Well, look, I think we live in an inauthentic age. And I don't think it's strong opinions that upset people. I think it's when you don't say what you actually believe. And I think fearlessness is so rare that there's a desperate craving, whether people agree or disagree, just for someone to be honest and to be fearless about what they truly believe. Because I think almost every person on the planet has drafted a tweet and then deleted it, or drafted a Facebook message and then deleted it. there is sort of a palpable fear in this country when it comes to being able to say exactly what you think, no matter what it is, because everybody's afraid of losing their job or having their kids get canceled or whatever it might be because of something like that. So where I think Outkick is having a lot of success, and certainly as I get older, what impresses me maybe the most is just absolute fearlessness. And what I have found is the more honest I am, or the more honest Outkick is, the bigger our audience gets. And so what I always say is, when we hire new people, hey, the goal at Outkick, what I have found works, and I've been writing on the internet for, almost 20 years now, which is a long time, is smart, original, funny, and authentic. And so what I always say is, you're going to hit a home run if you get all 4 of those into an article, but everything at Outkick needs to have at least one of those 4 in order to fit our brand. And ideally, we'd go 4 for 4. And the more we can do that, and the better the quality and the frequency of that, the more success I think we're going to have.
I think we're wrapping it up. I just have one, speaking of being completely honest, you need to give Joe Kinsey a raise. He is doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, I don't know if this is public, but we signed him to Fox. I say we, but Fox signed him because they own the company now. But Fox signed him to a 3-year deal, and
nice.
I agree with you.
Congrats
I think he does
Joe.
a three-year extension, I should say. I think he does a fabulous job, and I think he's a great example of, I try to retweet his screen caps most mornings. I think there's just a lot of people who wake up and they feel like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders, whether it's kids, jobs, obligations, serious things going on in life. And I think his column, almost every morning, you read it and you click on it, and you leave feeling a little bit better, smiling, feeling a little bit better about the day.
No doubt.
And so I think finding your lane and being able to deliver on it over and over again, you guys know you're long snappers. It's not good enough to do your job well once. One of the big challenges in any profession is being able to consistently deliver high level and high quality work. And that's what we're looking for at Outkick. And Joe is a great example of somebody who gets up every day, punches the clock, and delivers a high quality of work for us. And that's why, we're going to have him for years to come.
100%. Love that.
Well, Clay, thank you so much. Again, this has been so much fun for us. Super, super insightful. Unfortunately, we never heard back from Keith Olbermann to join tonight. He said he did not want the smoke when we offered for him to join you on the podcast this week. But man, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Appreciate y'all. I hope LSU has a good season, except come Saturday.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, I'll see you guys.
See ya.
Appreciate it. Clay Travis is, I feel like every time we get on here after an interview, we're like, wow, that was the best interview. These interviews keep getting better and better and better.
They do.
Javon Holland, amazing interview. Josh Allen, amazing interview.
Matthew
Smiley, phenomenal interview. Clay Travis he's so good. He's so good. We are super grateful.
We brought him on to talk SEC football, and that's exactly what he did. That's exactly what he did.
I'm curious now because obviously he was just doing it over the phone. I'm curious. He was at his son's baseball game. Was he rattling off all of that information off the top of his noggin?
That's what I was thinking.
That is incredibly impressive.
I mean, I was sitting here with my phone open, kind of on the score on the Yahoo app, going through the standings and the schedules and everything.
Yeah.
All of which he seemed to know just off the top of his head.
Yeah.
So
I don't know
injury
updates, it was very, very impressive. And for those of you who want to follow him, he is literally just at Clay Travis on Twitter, which is where he mainly operates, but also on at Outkick. That is his website and brand on social media. You can go follow him there. phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Fantastic.
That is a wrap on this week's episode of After the Snap. Thank you all for joining us. As always, follow us on social media at After the Snap Pod, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the places. Go subscribe, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find Blake and Reed cheesing at the podcast microphones and cameras, wherever you see us. Go follow us. Big cheesing. That's a wrap. This has been After the Snap. Tales from two brothers who live life upside down.